We also run innovation programs nationally, for example, our 5G testbed, Augmenta and Creative XR, which are focused around immersive technologies, Machine Intelligence Garage. This diverse support that we're able to offer the immersive community really mirrors the diverse immersive offering that the UK output. For example, we've got the large-scale, cutting-edge audience of the future demonstrators, and then on the other side, we've got local authorities using VR in a very business-as-usual way. We've got people creating digital twins of things like oil rigs and using things for maintenance. And we've also got amazing content creators who are on our programs, for example, such as Creative XR, creating cutting-edge content which is traveling all around the world. We had some really, really great interest internationally from our Creative XR program this year, really hoping to draw inward investment into the UK and helping the UK really be a leading light for immersive production. I think that all of us working in immersive technologies are very head down sometimes, and we're all creating content, we're all kind of ploughing our furrow. And it's really, really important to lift our head up out of this niche and look at the global and national perspective. And that's why this research today is really, really important to disseminate. And I think immersive computing is one of the deepest but nascent fields. So innovation, as you know, is never created in isolation. The important combination between public and private partnerships, academics, supporting our SMEs and our startups is really key, and I think that the information that you get in the two reports today will clarify that. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Fiona Kilkelly from Immerse UK, and she'll be telling you a little bit more about the report, and we'll have some fantastic panels later. We'll have a fantastic panel and the report findings by Digital Catapult and Jeremy Dalton from PwC.
That wasn't too difficult. It's my only couple of days on a crutch, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to fall off the stage on my way up. Hello, everyone. It's great to see so many faces in the room today, and so many familiar faces at that. You've all made a big journey to get here. Many of you have been up quite early, travelling from different parts of the UK, so really appreciate you taking the time to join us. When we published the first ever Immersive Economy report last year, we promised to industry that we would deliver it on an annual basis. And thankfully, we've been able to deliver on that promise, largely in part due to the Digital Catapult, who, as our report partners this year, have done such a fantastic job. They've done the lion's share of the work in collecting the data and the research and the data crunching, and they've been fab to work with. So big thanks to Cordelia, Alicia, Emily, Phil, and in the early days, Becky. I don't know if Becky's in the room, for all of the hard work in putting that together. And also to our extended Catapult family, Connected Places Catapult and the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre both supported this report. So greatly indebted to those catapults too. Also to Story Futures Academy, who are in the room, who helped contribute to the skills section. Thank you, guys. And we've got our contributing writers in the room, Tom and Bernie and many others. So this has been a big job, lots of people working hard together to make this happen. We've got a double whammy this morning, which is great. We've the additional value of being able to launch with PwC's Seeing is Believing report, which is fantastic. When Jeremy mentioned a few months ago that he was publishing this future scoping report, we thought, look, wouldn't it be fantastic to try and develop this together and synchronize our publishing so that we're in a position today to actually paint a really detailed picture for you, not just of what's happening in the UK today, not just what our capabilities and capacity in immersive technology is today in the UK, but also what does that look like in the future and where does that value lie? So thank you, Jeremy, for helping to make that happen. These reports are really important, I think, for a number of reasons. I don't know any other territory or any other country that publishes reports in this detail. I think the UK is pretty unique in this regard. And as a result, we have a showcase of who's doing really great work. where that work's happening, and demonstrating where the UK is adding value internationally in immersive technology. Secondly, how on earth are any of us meant to help support and grow the sector if we don't understand it? And these reports, for the first time, give us the information we need to know in order to support our incredible businesses going forward. And also for the people in the room and in government who've got their hands on the purse strings. We can use these reports to demonstrate where our value is, to help continue to shape policy and to make sure that funding, when it happens, is targeted exactly where our immersive technology businesses, researchers and innovators need it most. And I am really super proud of these reports this year because we see an industry that's consolidating, that's evolving, and it's not just a flash in the pan. Last year's report wasn't just a flash in the pan. This is real, this is growing. It's not a here today, gone tomorrow sector by any means. And this report this year you'll see is quite different to our report last year that we did with Nesta. There's a lot more emphasis on regional activity, which is super important. A lot more information around application growth areas and who's doing what in particular sectors. And I expect we will see year on year as we publish each immersive economy report, a very different report. And I think that's only right because I think we need to reflect the changing sector that we work with and represent. But what we do know from all of this research is that we are evolving and we are growing and we've got a very good story to tell. In tandem with that, Immerse UK is evolving. With our Innovate UK funding finishing this year and with the momentum of about 4,000 members behind us, we are evolving into a not-for-profit for industry by industry network, and we launch our premium membership model November 29th, which is next Thursday. I've got some flyers out on the desk. Do pick some up, and the information's also on our website. And a big thank you to our 20 incredible founding members who will be announcing next week, which are 20 of the best business and academic institutions in this country who are with us on the next phase of our journey. So what we're sharing here today really gives us a very good reason to be excited, to be positive and to be ambitious about the Immersive UK's technology sector going forward. But for me, it's really, really important that we all continue to work really hard together over the next couple of years to make all of this happen. We need to continue to grow and support our businesses, the research community, the innovators, that all form part of this amazing world-class immersive tech sector that we're part of today. But we also, in synchronicity with that, need to work super hard to fund the new seedling gems of ideas that are forming in your heads as we speak, that are parts of people's imaginations today, but will really become the trailblazing new immersive tech ideas of the future. And they're the ones that we want to showcase in our reports going forward. So thank you, enjoy today, and over to Cordelia and Jeremy.
Thanks very much, Fiona. I just want to run through the agenda very briefly before we go over to Cordelia and Jeremy. Could we have the agenda up on the... Okay, so first of all, we're going to have Cordelia talking about the Immersive Economy Report.
Thank you very much, Jessica. So, as Fiona mentioned, the report was a collaboration between ourselves here at Digital Catapult and Immerse UK. And our main methodology for collecting the information that we did was to map out immersive companies around the UK with the help of our friends at Glass AI. We were really lucky to work with Glass AI as they were, in fact, on our machine intelligence garage cohort a couple of years ago. And Sergi will be telling you a little bit more about their methodologies in a second. We also surveyed 160 immersive companies and held interviews with key stakeholders. Over to you, Sergi.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sergi Martorelli. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Glass AI. We're a UK technology company that has developed AI that can understand and read language at a very large scale, language in the form of text. And we're applying this innovation to read the open web and organize content from the open web. We have links to UCL and also Imperial College. We got some funding from Imperial Innovations. And yeah, so very quickly, in 5 minutes, I promise, I'm going to tell you about our technology, how this technology has been applied, and how we helped Immerse UK and Digital Catapult put together the report for the second year in a row. So starting about our technology, as I'm sure you know, over the past few years, there's been an explosion of content. About 90% of the world's data was created in the last 2 years alone. This is a trend that is set to continue. Sorry. The data comes in audio, video, text, and it can be found in various platforms. One of them is the open web. But even today, it's still difficult for computers to understand content at scale. And this is the core innovation we've developed at Glass AI. We've built technology that can understand language, understand text at a large scale. It's the result of several years of research. It's in the field of machine language understanding that aims to give computers the ability to understand not just words, but entire sentences and entire paragraphs. And essentially, it's an intelligent crawler, what we have. An intelligent crawler that reads the open web, millions of sites. It can understand if, for example, a website belongs to a business. It will read the content and detect NLP type of entities with very high accuracy, like the description of a company, the topics of the organization, the biographies of the individuals, etc. And that's what we've done. That's the core technology. Now, since we came out of R&D about 18 months ago, we've been working with two main audiences. On the one side is corporates. Corporates are increasingly using our capability to monitor trends, sectors, competitors, to build proprietary data sets from reading the open web. But also we're increasingly working with government and organizations like Immerse UK and Digital Catapult. Forgot to mention we're members of the Machine Intelligence Garage. And the main use case is to map emerging sectors of the economy. Now, emerging sectors of the economy, if you use official statistics, are very hard to understand because they're just not there. So it requires reading other things like websites, news, social media, and so on and so forth. And this is exactly what we did for this project for the second year in a row. We initially agreed with Digital Catapult and Immerse UK a set of topics, a set of areas that they were interested in, immersive related topics. Our crawler is currently reading more than 2 million websites of UK businesses. We've estimated there are about 2.5 million businesses in the UK with a website. So we're reading about 80 to 90% of the UK economy based on its web presence. So we agreed those topics, pointed the crawler at reading these websites. It's about 1 billion pages that we read on a regular basis. And also we read other sources like news, social media, official sources. And this is how we see the open web, the different buckets of data where you can find evidence about immersive related companies. Now the result was, the result was that we were able to identify companies where the core business has a technology, immersive technology component. That was about 1,250 companies that we call specialist companies, where we could find evidence from reading the sites and other sources that those companies were in the immersive related economy. But also we were able to identify companies that are applying these technologies. For example, dentists, museums that are using AR, VR, and all these different technologies. So in a nutshell, this is what we did. I promised to keep it short. Then we passed on the data to the team that took it forward, ran the surveys, and built the case studies. Hopefully this is useful.
Thank you very much, Sergi. So the key themes that we identified from this piece of research are that immersive companies are indeed starting to scale, that there are a number of core application growth areas being applied, including training, architecture, manufacturing, healthcare. That immersive companies are not just located in London, but are indeed popping up all over the UK with some regional growth hubs. Public support for R&D is growing, but immersive companies are still facing barriers to growth, such as access to finance, device adoption, and the skills gap. So we structured the report into 5 core sections that I'll just quickly run you through. In part 1, we've looked at the state of the nation with our data analysis and numbers. Part 2 looks at those application growth areas and offers a number of case studies of each of them. Sadly, I won't have time to go into all of them today in the interest of time, but please do have a look at section 2 of the report for some really great case studies. Part 3 looks at regional hubs of activity and identifies opportunities, infrastructure, barriers and core companies. And we then look at the R&D landscape and public funding opportunities, followed by a quick deep dive into investment. So to run you through some of the key survey findings, the business models of the companies that we surveyed were quite mixed. We allowed them to choose one or more options between product-based, consultancy-based, and service-based, and many businesses had mixed business models, so 59% identified as product-based, 51% as consultancy, and 70% as service-based. And we saw companies identifying as quite scaled stages, so 24.5% identified themselves as a growing startup, 12% as a scale-up, and 20.8% as an established SME. And indeed, companies are making revenue. 60% of those surveyed had increased revenues in the last 12 months, and only 13% had seen a decrease. And while 29% of the companies surveyed identified as an early-stage startup, only 14.4% were pre-revenue, which is really positive. But despite all this, it really is a nascent sector, and 44.4% of companies surveyed had revenues less than £500,000 a year. But despite small revenues, many companies are indeed exporting. 62.3% of respondents claim to be exporting products, services, or content related to immersive technologies. This was predominantly to Europe and the US. Some of the key opportunities identified by survey respondents, 92% expect their spend on immersive technologies to grow in the next 12 months. 65% said that the technology opened new markets and sectors for their business. 70% found that it was helping them to offer new or improved products and services. And 7% has said it has helped them improve their organisation. Many of the barriers are what you'd expect at this stage in the adoption cycle, but access to finance was a barrier for 52%. Difficulty in recruiting talent was a barrier for 45%. And as Fiona mentioned, we have a lovely section put together by Story Futures Academy looking at this in more detail, which I'd urge you to read. Low device adoption was an issue for 54%, and the fragmented device ecosystem for 43%. So following the survey findings, we have a section on key application growth areas. We identified 7 areas: architecture and planning, construction, engineering and manufacturing, entertainment, healthcare, training and transport. And please do have a look at section 2 for some really great case studies of some of the brilliant companies working in these areas. Next, on to the regional hubs. We identified that 53% of the companies Glass AI identified are based outside of London. And so we looked at different areas of the UK where there is either a large number of immersive companies or a really great selection of facilities and support popping up by universities, local government accelerators and incubators. So we identified 8 key areas, and these are all to be found in section 3 of the report. Next, research and development. We identified from the UKRI database that over 500 immersive technology projects have been ongoing, open or completed since 2018, worth over £220 million. And indeed, £33 million is being invested in immersive technologies as part of the creative industry sector deal, including Audience of the Future. And here at Digital Catapult, we're supporting the ecosystem as well. As Jessie mentioned, we have our Creative XR programme, and we saw several of you in the room here today at our showcase and marketplace a few weeks ago. And we currently have our Augmentor programme running, helping the next generation of immersive technology companies become investor ready. We have 10 very exciting companies on the programme as well. And please see section 4 for more information about the R&D landscape. And finally, we looked at the investor landscape with some information provided to us by the Accelerator Network. After a record year in 2017, VR investment fell 37%, following market trends to 113 million. Though deal numbers have increased, AR investment was actually up 40% from 2017 to 2018, and again, deal numbers were up. Interestingly, companies using combined AR-VR solutions saw a significant decrease in investment from 227 million to 181 million. However, there was an increase in seed stage investment, so perhaps this is a hot area for investors at the moment. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions as we're on quite a tight schedule, but myself, Fiona, Sergi will all be outside in the networking time afterwards, so please do come and find us if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Cordelia. Jeremy, I'd like you to come up to the stage.
Thank you so much, Jess.
Thanks. Jeremy Dalton from PwC.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeremy Dalton and I take care of the virtual reality and augmented reality team for PwC UK. First of all, let me say that it is an absolute pleasure to be co-launching with Immerse UK and Digital Catapult on this. I think the more voices we have in the virtual reality and augmented reality industry about the use cases relating to these technologies, the better it will be. So I'm looking forward to working more in the future as well. For those of you who are wondering, and I'm sure there are a few, isn't PwC just an auditing company? I'm here to tell you that that is one thing that we do, but on a more broader basis, our objective is to solve business problems. And the reason why virtual reality and augmented reality is extremely important in that is because these technologies do solve business problems in a number of different ways. I'll brush over a few here, but we can of course go into more detail afterwards. In terms of how we help companies, it starts with helping them understand the technology. What is it exactly? How is it defined? What can it do? What is everyone else doing? What could be done in the future? The next stage is around the strategy relating to the technology, building the business cases, like this report, to help use in stakeholder conversations. The next step, software development, and then finally, deployment, actually taking all of this, packaging up, and implementing it in enterprise. So I know there are a lot of VR/AR industry people in the room, and forgive me if you're rolling your eyes right now, but I thought for those who aren't in the industry, it's always useful to go back to definitions, or let's say our definition at least. When we say virtual reality, we are talking about a completely immersive digital environment that could be based on the real world, taken from a camera, or a completely computer generated. When we say augmented reality, we're talking about a part digital environment, one in which you are still in the real world, however you have digital information overlaid on top of that world. And that can either be a flat overlay, or that can be a seemingly 3D object that knows the environment around it. Virtual reality and augmented reality technologies are being used in every single industry right now. It's not about what it could be used for, it's about how it adds value to businesses right now today. American Airlines, using virtual reality for training. ASOS, using augmented reality for greater consumer engagement. And Damien, part of Janosch's team at Holomy will be talking about that, I'm sure, on the panel. GSK, using virtual reality to understand consumer behaviours better. Bank of Ireland, using virtual reality to collaborate and communicate between different employees and different offices. Foster and Partners, using virtual reality to help design buildings and to see them to scale without having to actually build them. And there are a slew of other examples, these are just a few. In terms of how this relates to the economic impact report we've built, effectively, all of these use cases, of which there are hundreds and thousands of examples out there right now, they all feed into different areas. These are a few high-level ones that we used to try and group them together. And then what we did is we said, okay, to consolidate them down further, what is this really tackling? And these are the 5 areas that we came across and used as the basis for the report. Product and service development, everything to do with designing environments, visualizing assets, objects, having collaborative meetings remotely more effectively. Healthcare, being able to provide better diagnostic information, improving the outcomes of surgeries. Development and training, massive use case for virtual reality and augmented reality. Helping to save costs, helping to create efficiencies, no longer needing your staff to travel to different locations to perform complex procedures, because that entire environment can be recreated as software in virtual reality and go anywhere in the world. Process improvements, a big use case for augmented reality here. If you've got a complicated piece of machinery or a complicated task in front of you, instead of having to spend a lot of time training to do that, you can be given that instruction directly applied to the object itself through an augmented reality headset or mobile device. And retail and consumer. This one, a little bit more obvious, helping to engage with consumers in more innovative ways. The gaming industry, well known, starting to use a lot of virtual reality, in fact, driving a lot of virtual reality innovation, and therefore driving further contributions to the economy around the world. Then, taking all those use cases, applying research around headset adoption currently and forecast into the future, combining that with where we see it applying from a virtual reality and augmented reality perspective, that involves professional judgment on our part as well as interviews outside of PwC with VRAR stakeholders, using the expertise of our economics team and their computable general equilibrium model. I had to memorize that one. I'm not an economist. And 100 Excel sheets later, we have these numbers here. Don't ask me to explain the Excel sheets, please. But if you want to go into more detail, more than happy to provide access to that team as well. So, in terms of the results, big number. $1.5 trillion in terms of a boost to GDP globally by 2030 as a result of virtual reality and augmented reality technologies. Slightly controversial slides from the discussions I've had this morning. This is meant for informational purposes. It doesn't mean that augmented reality is better than virtual reality. It is designed to provide a breakout of the information. And you can access all of this breakout information online, pwc.com/seeing is believing. You can see the AR/VR split. You can see the split from 2019 to 2030. You can see the split across use cases. It's there for you to be able to use in your conversations with clients, with stakeholders, and anyone else who wants to listen. The idea here is that, in my opinion, augmented reality has already shown greater contribution to GDP globally and will do so into the future to 2030 for a few reasons. One is that the use cases are more broad and more accessible and more applicable to different industries. The second reason, it's not only about headsets when it comes to augmented reality. more and more, in our pockets, as a default technology, we have the ability to run strong augmented reality applications. And these are part of the drivers on these results. Globally, we had to pull a selection together, otherwise this economic analysis would have taken the next 12 months to deliver. So we chose a few economies around the world to conduct this, and this split is also available online as well. Very high level, and perhaps not surprising to a lot of us, the USA is in the lead with $537 billion contributed to GDP as a result of the technologies, followed very closely by East Asia in Japan and China, and then Europe. And I'm glad to say that the UK, being on this list, is one of the forerunners in using this technology. It's pretty clear from the strong base of creatives that we have in this country that we have some really amazing people here, some amazing talent, and that's part of the reason why we have an almost $70 billion contribution to this country as a result of VR/AR technology. There are challenges, of course, and again, going for an exercise of grouping these up, these are the four that we see consolidated. Firstly, user experience. Yes, the headsets are sometimes clunky, heavy, uncomfortable, not made to fit your head, uncomfortable if you wear glasses, and the list goes on and on and on. Some of them are complicated to set up. They're not as easy as taking out your mobile phone and just swiping it and pointing at your face. From a cost perspective, they are expensive to a lot of consumers. They're expensive to some businesses still. Content. Quality content is key. Everyone will judge VR/AR technology by the basis of the experiences that they have with the technology. If those experiences are not good, that judgment will be ultimate, or it will be very difficult to pull someone back from a negative experience with the technology. And finally, education. I don't mean education as in universities and schools. I mean education of the population in general around the power of this technology. Not everyone truly understands what it can do. Not everyone has had an experience beyond the Google Cardboard headset. And it's important to bear that all in mind as we continue onto the future with VR/AR technology. The good news is, of course, that all of these challenges are being addressed. Day by day, developments are happening in the industry and things are getting better and better. And that is partly contributing to the exponential rise of this technology in terms of its GDP boost to the global economy as well. Bearing in mind those challenges, there's no reason not to get started with using VR/AR technology. For any organizations out there that are thinking about it, 5 tips. Firstly, focus on solving business problems. There's a lot of hype around the technology, there's a lot of excitement. If you're building a business case on hype and excitement, it's unlikely to go anywhere. If you're building it on the foundation of a solid return on investment, you will always have a business case to take for version 2. Secondly, think about more than just the software. Virtual reality and augmented reality is not just software. Software is one phase, as you saw at the beginning of this presentation. Before that and after that are equally important phases around designing that solution and deploying it effectively in an organization. Thinking about your people, thinking about how that would actually work, thinking about the facilitation, the training, the environment that comes with it. All of those aspects are equally important. Create a seamless experience. This is relating to content. Again, people are used to, or are getting used to now, touch screens. We moved on from keyboards and mice, which we still have obviously with laptops. But when it comes to virtual reality and augmented reality, this is a different input-output system. You are now looking through a headset, you're using gesture controls. Perhaps you're using voice input to command it all. A lot of individuals are not used to this technology or this way of interfacing with digital environments and assets. Bear that in mind when you're creating content. Fourth, get stuck in with a test case. You don't need to spend millions of pounds on investing in the tech and deploying it across the entire organisation. Have a pilot program. Start with an office, start with a department, start with 5 people or 10 people. Learn from that and build from there. And related to the last step, measure the results and act accordingly. If VR/AR is the wrong solution, and it may be, it's not the right solution for everything, that's okay. There is always a lesson to be learned, even in failure. And finally, I wanted this to be like movie credits rolling at the end, but I didn't think I'd have enough time to let it roll. So instead I thought I'd give you, this is an extract or a selection of everyone that has been involved in putting this report together. And I'm greatly appreciative to all of you. Thank you so much, particularly a lot of the marketing and PR team who are here today. You've done a great job, and it's been incredibly complicated trying to get web AR experiences onto a report, liaising with the economics team and the design team and PR and the global PwC networks. It's been difficult, but thank you so much, and thank you everyone here for listening.
Please sit down. Thank you very much for that, Jeremy. I'd like to introduce Emily now, and she's going to present our panel.
All right, thank you, Jessie. Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Savage. I work alongside Jessie here at the Digital Catapult, and I head up our immersive product and partnerships. So if anyone wants to talk more about working with Digital Catapult, please feel free to grab me afterwards. But now I am delighted to introduce our panel. We're going to have quite a general conversation, a little bit around the reports, but also about some of the themes that came up in the report. So without further ado, let me welcome up to the stage Fiona. Please come back up. So as you all know, Head of Creative at Immerse UK. Jeremy, you're already here. Wonderful. Thank you. And as you're all well aware, Head of VR/AR at PwC. And then equally, I would like to welcome Leila Martin, who is Director of Product Marketing at Microsoft. Thanks very much, Leila. And Damien Hickey, who's Chief Product Officer at Holomy. Brilliant. Thank you very much. All right, welcome. Before we kick off, let's just get a little bit of a show of hands from the audience. Who here would consider themselves to be working more on the consumer side of the industry? By that I mean making content, games, that kind of thing for the industry. Okay. And then on the flip side, who would consider themselves to be working on the enterprise side, so making products, services that are going into B2B purposes? Okay, all right, and then I'm guessing we've got a general mix of other people that are supporting the industry. Okay, that's good to know. That actually wasn't too bad a split. So really today, we want to be discussing a little bit around some of those themes that came up, and some of the big ones, I think we can say, are the fact that we're moving into a scaling economy. So our startups are moving into scale-ups, which is great news. But what does that mean and how do we support them? And then equally around those business challenges. So how do we move from businesses taking their first steps into commissioning and utilizing immersive for business purposes into actually fully adopting it and fully embracing it as a must-have? So let's open up, first of all, with the panel. And as a way of kind of introducing yourselves, I want us to just all say a few thoughts on your most kind of positive recent experiences with immersive. I think it's really easy for us to get hung up on the challenges, on the very turbulent economy that we've had in the space over the last year or so. So let's start up with some positive vibes. What have you seen that's really excited you and inspired you in the last 12 months or so? We'll start with you, Damien, seeing as you're closest.
Hi, can you hear me okay? I'm Damien Hickey. I'm the Chief Product Officer for Holomy. I think the thing that I'm most buoyed about, certainly in the last probably 12, 18 months, and I've been in AR now for about 5 or 6 years, is the opportunity to see more and more people coming into the space and really asking very pertinent questions about what they can do with it, how they can begin to use it in a much more kind of utilitarian kind of way, changing behaviours, and really adopting kind of the right kind of content to develop for relevant experiences, really. that's through creative, through brand managers, through a number of different areas. So for me, it's beginning to see that point of maturity, and it's needed to do that for some time. So I'm glad we're in that space now. We're having much more kind of contextual conversations around, certainly AR for me anyway.
Yeah, okay, all right, that's good to hear. Layla, what about at Microsoft and with HoloLens?
Yeah, so I suppose that I've got a few things that probably over the last 12 months it's been pretty dynamic, including having had the privilege over the last few years of working with customers and partners in the enterprise space to really start developing a real product, a real capability, especially as we start transitioning from kind of development kits, very early stage kind of prototypes, proof of concepts, some early stage pilots, and then transitioning into production, which is where I see us starting to go. So two very specific examples. One is I'll use an example of Lockheed Martin, who's been very public about the ROI that they have been getting. On just one example, they're talking about how they're saving $38 per fastener, and then they add, and we buy 2 million fasteners a year. So they're actually in production, they're getting results, they're starting with projects, they're following exactly the PwC model. And I think that's really important because at the same time, in the second development that I'm very really energized by is the work that our partners, many of the scale-ups, and a few that are actually in the research reports today that have been launched today have been developing products over the last couple of years. And that's taken a little bit of time, as it does, to be able to create enterprise solutions. You have to understand the use case. You have to get a client. You've got to get a client willing to pay or to have government funding to be able to support that. And then you need to, while developing a product, be able to pay payroll so that you can actually develop it, prove out the test case, get the pilots, get the funding to be able to move from pilot into production. That's what productization actually takes, and it's taken a couple of years to be able to do that. But with both pilots and real ROI from enterprises, plus real products that companies can now start using right out of the box, I think we're at that very important tipping point that we see in the economic graph, not graft.
Thank you.
So for me, I often get challenged around virtual reality and its ability to scale. So a lot of clients come to me and they say, Jeremy, this is all great, but how are we going to scale virtual reality? We built a cyber crisis scenario, so effectively a virtual reality experience that puts you in the middle of a cybersecurity attack on your organization. In that world and environment and scenario, you have to make a number of decisions. The decisions you make affect the storyline. It's like a poor person's Bandersnatch, basically, with only about 2 decision points. We didn't have the budget for those production values. But no, the reason I'm incredibly proud of that is because we took that to Toronto and we ran it with close to 300 people simultaneously in the same room while collecting data on every single one of those individuals as to where they were in the narrative, what decisions they were making, and how long they were taking to make those decisions. And I was getting that data in real time on a tablet at the back of the room. I bring up that example every time someone tells me VR can't scale. And the great thing is, that's going to improve further into the future as headsets become smaller, lighter, more comfortable, more portable, more an everyday device like our mobile phone. Imagine how scalable it's going to be then, if it's acting similar to your mobile phone laptop device ecosystem that goes around with you everywhere. That's incredibly exciting for me.
Yeah, hear, hear. And it's not far off, is it? I mean, it's, I think there was a bit of a danger 3 or 4 years ago when all of these big figures and big ambitious visualizations of AR and VR in the future, and then it didn't transpire rather as quickly as it was predicted, and then everybody sitting around kind of going, well, where is this great AR and VR that everybody's talked about? Now we're seeing it. Now it's happening, and that's because exactly of what Jeremy's talking about. But to answer your question, Emily, for us, I think we're Immerse UK, well, we're a cross-sector network, so we work with every industry innovating in this space, and we're also managed by the KTN, and we've got some KTN colleagues here today. We're in a pretty privileged position, because we, as KTN, support companies with their grant applications and proposals. So we see a lot of what companies are thinking and what ideas they're trying to bring into reality, even if they don't get funding. And it is overwhelming and incredibly inspiring what's actually going on out there. We just don't get to see half of it because the money isn't there to fund it. They don't get the money to create it and make it into a pilot. And it doesn't become a reality, unfortunately, for many. And that's something we've got to change. But it is truly, I'm sure Asha, my colleague at Immerse UK, would say the same thing. When you're at the coalface and you're working with these people all the time, it's gobsmacking. The UK has it. We have got it. Absolutely 100%, we know we do. We need to put the scaffolding and the infrastructure in place a bit more to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Here to that. I think, you know, we can honestly say we see the same thing as well with programs like Augmentor, the types of startups that come into that program with such a diverse range of intriguing ideas, as you say, build products, services with immersive. And I think the positive news on our side on that front is that things like Augmentor actually attracted more investors than we've ever seen before. So the investors that support the program, they come on board to see these startups and potentially invest at the end of it. And that was really, really rewarding for us, along with growth in Creative XR as well, to see that there is still that bubbling investor interest in all of this. All right, well, let's move on to, I guess, the point that's coming up from this. Which is exactly as you said, Jeremy, headset prices are coming down. Prices are starting to drop. As we all predicted kind of 3 years ago, we're getting to that point. However, we're still seeing that enterprises, businesses that are wanting to look at how they can use immersive are still being quite tentative. They're still often looking at the initial expense, the cost of getting however many headsets for the business, the cost of making that content, and they're not necessarily moving to the point of ROI. I know it came up a lot in the PwC report. So starting with you maybe, Layla, I think this is a term you used, which was really interesting when we spoke beforehand, but how do we start getting businesses to think about immersive adoption as digital transformation, to consider it in the same light, to have whole teams built around it, to have budgets put into place, and for it to sit potentially under that CTO function? How do we get to that next step in adoption?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think that the starting point is actually jumping in and getting the ROI and just starting, because you can get a bit of a groundswell and have champions within the organization from a bottom-up perspective, but at the same time, from a corporation perspective, top-down is also really important. I'm going to give an example around Airbus, which is one of our customers who's become a partner of ours in France. And one of the things that they did very, very early on is see the power of the technology and starting to think about what are the investments that they needed to make in order to really be strategic around this. So they created actually a holographic academy in Toulouse, where they actually brought their developers together in a centralized space. And as part of that facility, the Holographic Academy, they started off working with Microsoft, but then they could start really working on their own. And as a result of this, they're building products that help to be able to streamline in terms of understanding the internal requirements across all of Airbus so that they are not duplicating IP from organization to organization. They're also identifying where are their products that they can resell to their customers. For instance, doing training for airpit crew, for instance, and they're being able to start reselling that. Now, the thing that's great about the Holographic Academy Airbus model is they've then started to be able to get partners involved and universities involved in doing hackathons, doing research projects. So they've gotten a groundswell across this. So I think that it's a combination of both of these things, which is the just bottoms up, get some projects and get going, but there also needs to be a flip in the mindset of executives of seeing this as real transformative growth that also extends, by the way, because these are just visualization layers. So these are also enhancing existing processes and existing technologies, including 5G and digital twin and all of these other kind of IoT capabilities. And they're not separate things, but they have to have a groundswell together in order to get really off the ground so a company can take really systemic benefit from it.
Thank you. Jeremy, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on this too, seeing as it came up quite a lot.
That last point you just mentioned, actually, incredibly important. Convergence of emerging technologies. And I'm guilty of this myself. Sometimes we think of these technologies in silos. It's a virtual reality solution, or it's an artificial intelligence solution, or an IoT solution. More often than not, and going into the future, we should see this more. The real value will come when we start to see the convergence of all of these technologies for different use cases. So if you think about drones and virtual reality, to take two, for example, MIT is using virtual reality to train drones to fly safer and maneuver through difficult environments. If you take augmented reality and IoT, in terms of if you have a headset, you're looking at a piece of machinery, you could be getting data on that exact machinery overlaid in your field of view by connecting it to the Internet of Things and displaying that data in front of you. So it's really interesting when you start to dig deeper into where could the value lie when you bring these technologies together.
Thanks for that. I'm going to whiz on to the next question, which I think will be more relevant for yourself, Fiona, and you, Damien. By the way, I am going to try and leave 5 minutes at the end for all of you guys to ask some questions. So get thinking. I very much want to get some of your opinions on board as well. So we'll try and chat for another kind of 5-10 minutes here, and then over to you guys. So I think something that again we really talked about a lot when we're thinking about this is the fact that we're the UK has a lot of strength, and predominantly at the moment we have an awful lot of creative strength in immersive. We've proved that out with loads of activities. Obviously, Creative XR has been a massive success. It's ongoing. That's supporting lots and lots of prototypes of original content. And equally, we've seen incredible things from the gaming community and the storytelling community here in the UK. This is something I wanted to point towards you initially, Fiona, is all of these things that we're learning about creative content making. We've always been known in the UK for being very strong at this. We've got a rich advertising environment, really rich arts and culture environment, and it seems that those lessons have immediately translated into success in the immersive space across all of our media players. Obviously some major ones in the room here as well. So what do you think we can take from those creative learnings that can actually be translated and moved across into how we can continue to grow in the enterprise space and in that B2B sector, and in regards to more companies actually adopting this for the kind of business critical usages as well?
Sure. Well, let's take all of it, I think, really is the short answer. Last year's report showed that 3/4 of our creative businesses in immersive were driving in innovation in sectors outside of immersive. So we know that a lot of creative immersive businesses are looking at new markets, some of it out of necessity, looking to keep the doors open and the lights on, and some of it because they really see an opportunity to pivot and apply what they do in another space. So many companies doing really interesting stuff. And to me, that's the nexus of where all of this really will start to ignite, really. We've done and continue to do a lot of work around the brokering of those relationships and the connecting of these sectors, which is one of the reasons we set Immerse UK up, because I think it really is at the heart of making that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Damien, I don't know if you've got a bit to add there. Obviously, Holomy is kind of started on the creative side and now seems to be rapidly evolving and expanding. So tell us a bit more about what lessons you think can be learned from creative immersive moving into enterprise focus.
It's been, for me, the domain of the specialist for a long time, and we need to really start to provide services back to people to allow them to access it from themselves. So from a platform perspective, from a product perspective, we need to make it easy to use, simple to attain, and easy to deploy, because ultimately it's not us developing that content anymore, it's now providing that at scale. And that equally then goes back into organisations worked for Diageo for a long time in their digital transformation program. And one of the things that was evident to me there was the need to drive ROI as quickly as possible. And if you don't understand the value of things, if you can't access that kind of technology, then there's no point deploying it. So innovation actually exists in a peripheral, and we need to bring it into the mainstay. And in order to do that, we need creatives to be a lot more braver in this space and actually understand that the production processes are there really to augment what they've already done rather than develop new production processes. So the cost of that process is coming down as well. So there's a mix of education, a need for people to be a little bit more brave, and I think equally to stop thinking of innovation as this kind of peripheral thing. You know, so there's a real opportunity here for people. They just need to be grabbing it with both hands and giving it a go, really.
Yeah, okay, so the message is be as bold as people are in the creative sector, and enterprises will succeed. To carry on that point, obviously, we were talking yesterday, and you're saying Holomy has experienced, some really great growth in recent times, and so you are, that true representation that we found in our report, that you're a startup moving into that scale-up territory. What do you think is your strategy as a company? What's your strategy to embracing that growth, embracing the next set of challenges that come with being a scale-up, where you are moving, away from that initial survival and more towards the long-term sustainability? But how are you as a company looking to be able to hold on to this, sometimes turbulent feeling sector and continue to grow?
Yeah, I think you start out with a view about what you want to do with your product, what you want to do with your platforms, with your portfolio. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you need to listen to what people are telling you, and you need to be able to adapt and evolve to that quickly. And if that position is not right for you, then you've got to move, and you've got to continue to move quickly. We're in a position now where technology is accelerating. We're seeing new hardware come onto the market. We're seeing new software come to the market. So there is a need to be adaptable and flexible within your product base as well. APIs are key for us. Flexibility, integration into other platforms, collaboration with other platforms, seeing the value of the likes of e-commerce and website builders, bringing that to the masses in the best way possible. And again, I think handing back the ability to be able to create content in this space, not only for businesses, but for storytellers, for creators. There's a number of different things going on, but it's just a question of, I think, providing the service in the right way, listening to what your users are telling you, and then adapting accordingly, and trying to maintain this kind of simple view around everything we do.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting and key lesson, and such a hard one to follow, isn't it? Staying adaptable as a small company is critical, and can be seemingly really hard to do as well. All right, I'm gonna ask one kind of final question that I think lots of people will be able to contribute to, and then we'll just open it up a bit. So, as we said, you've experienced growth. Jeremy, I know your team's been experiencing growth. I think, generally speaking, we are starting to see core companies starting to recruit and pick up. As we all know, there is only a certain amount of people that have actually been in this immersive space for any length of time. So let's just quickly have a general talk about what's the secret to success, and where are good people being found outside of this relatively small pool of immersive folks so far. What are the kind of critical overlap industries, and where are you hiring from? And I'm sure that's going to be applicable to all of you. So maybe starting with Damien and move down.
We're obviously looking at the development community heavily and understanding what new skills are coming into that play. But equally, there's a lot of knowledge that can be attained from marketing, from brand. We need to have a look at the operations side of the business, sales side of the business. I mean, ultimately, as a business, we have to make money, and we need to continue to grow and invest in what we're doing. And that's not only investment in the business, but investing in people. We've then got to think about the onboarding process. You're introducing different cultures, different societies, different capabilities into the business. They have to evolve as new businesses come onto the market. They're bringing new technologies with them, they're bringing new capabilities with them, new disciplines. So we have to think about how we can then start to allow our culture to grow in the right way, and identify these people early on as well. But onboarding is going to be key to us. When we're coming in, you're coming into a business that's already succeeding. It's has its foundations. We have a very clear roadmap of where we want to go. So we need people to understand what that looks like, how they fit into that process, and equally how we make them succeed in that role as well.
And going from the smaller to the larger, Layla, I mean, in terms of you getting on great members of the team, how does it work for Microsoft, and where are you finding them?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. I mean, we've got most of our development obviously in the US in Redmond, but we do have a studios team that's based here, and talent acquisition is incredibly hard, as it is for a lot of our partners. I think that there's something quite magical right now, and I love the word that you used around scaffolding for the industry from a funding perspective, but I also think from a skills development perspective, whereby alongside universities, we're seeing a lot of industry exchange network type of programs. And I think that where we can get the really magical development and training out of some of the best universities in the world that are producing amazing talent, the quicker that we can get them doing real projects with industry, so they're really grounded in the business requirements, and that we're graduating talent and are starting to get a pipeline of that talent that has the networks to be able to easily find jobs. I think if we can do more around creating that scaffolding, I think that we'll all be a little bit better off, because it is going to continue being a real challenge for us.
That's a great point, and I think we're really realising that ourselves as well, that that pipeline from university to industry is only just starting to actually properly emerge, and we're really trying to support that too. But go on, Jeremy, your team is just expanding, exploding, right?
No, absolutely, and there are a lot of points to mention, but one that I find quite interesting and exciting, and it relates to the UK market's attitude towards employment in general. It's not necessarily related to virtual reality and augmented reality, but at PwC we take on not only university graduates and people who are experienced in business, but we also take on employees straight from high school as apprentices. In fact, within our team we have 2 hire apprentices at any time. And the point there is that skill sets can come from anywhere and at any age. And it's incredibly exciting to be able to pull on that pool of talent, and on such a talent pool that is not necessarily specialists in the technology. And that is what I mean by the UK market. You can leave high school and join a massive international conglomerate. You can go to university, study almost anything, and become almost anything. This is not a given in every part of the world, and I think it's something that we should be incredibly proud of here.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes, we have a unpredictable route through career here in the UK, which is great. Fiona, let's finish up with a few words from you. Obviously, that's one of the main purposes of Immerse, to actually allow for the networking to happen, for people to meet each other. What are you looking at doing in order to kind of continue to support how people are finding their way into new opportunities and businesses can close that gap?
Yeah, sure. We just actually did an event, Asha ran an event with BAFTA last week with BAFTA Games Crew to meet immersive companies trying to develop a pipeline between 2 sectors who don't necessarily directly have an immediate route to each other. I think listening to what we were just talking about skills, and I was thinking about, well, how do we support skills development within existing businesses? And we were talking about scaling up earlier. It's where I think we need to probably focus a lot more effort, is supporting the scale up of our existing companies whilst pump priming new R&D and new ideas into the pipeline. And I think a lot more can be done to arm companies with the information they need to decide decide how they want to grow, and which way they want to grow, and what type of funding and finance route's best for them. Is it investment or is it not investment? If it is, what do I need to do to attract an investor? So those kind of core business development skills is something great programs like Augmentor do. I think more support and activity to equip our immersive businesses to scale up, be able to act quickly and responsively about getting funding into the business to do what they need to do quickly enough so they can scale up, and we can continue to compete internationally with what's happening elsewhere in the world.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you all. We have got time, I think, probably just for one or maybe two questions. I'm looking around for people. Excellent. All right. Yeah, double whammy. Go for it, David.
We've talked a lot about technology. I think maybe we should start thinking about immersive, which is the type of report as a communications medium. And actually, it's much more about getting people to do things more efficiently and effectively using a whole suite of new technologies. But ultimately, whether we're training or whether we're entertaining people or whether we're doing any other form of use cases that we talked about, it's about communicating more effectively. I think we do ourselves as an industry a disservice, frankly, to talk about technology as the first point of contact, and instead about how we can do the standard things that we do today better through a newer medium. What are the panel's thoughts on that?
I think it's an absolutely valid point. At the end of the day, we can't necessarily point towards technology as the beginning of a conversation, sort of presetting views on this is going to be the solution. More to your point, when you think about the higher level use case, it does come down to communication at the end of the day. And in fact, in a very direct way as well. In addition to training use cases and things like that we spoke about, directly communicating and collaborating is in fact part of the economic analysis that leads to the highest GDP boost globally. Because obviously the ability to communicate and collaborate more effectively is something that applies to every single business of every single size in every single country around the world. So if we can do that 0.1% more effectively, that has incredible ramifications for the world economy.
Yeah, and I think it's actually an incredibly important point. We see this as the third wave at Microsoft, as the third wave of computing beyond, what PCs were able to do in terms of revolutionizing communication through productivity gains. And then being able to have the second wave of mobility, it's in your pocket. Again, that is a communication vehicle. You're absolutely spot on that this next wave of computing, where you can liberate apps off of a 2D screen and make the whole world your app canvas, because that really is what the potential and what this medium will create. It is all about communications and enablement toward that. So yeah, open to suggestions in terms of how we get more government funding to help the scaffolding of that, and if we need to change our taxonomy, but the point is the right one.
Go on, we'll take one or two more, because I realise then we're going into networking. Go on, Catherine, from this side. Yep.
Hi, I was wondering what you think the biggest threats that the sector faces are.
Lack of investment to start with. Lack of a propensity for investors to come out and say, actually, we believe this is going to be the future. We want to invest in this. There's going to be some risk, but we need to understand how we mitigate that risk and how we measure success accordingly. And hopefully we can get some more, well, I keep coming back to this term, brave people kind of starting to stand up and actually seeing there's a value here and invest.
One of the things that I think a lot about is I've had the purview across being able to see lots of partners and companies across all of Europe and globally. And one thing I think is that the UK does have one of the most vibrant creative sectors and talents. But that's really been focused around the consumer and storytelling side of this. And with where a lot of the investment and funding is starting to come in right now on the commercial side, one of the things that we've seen in the report is the fact that we're exporting, maybe as Fiona says, out of necessity, into other markets. I'm seeing tremendous exporting from other countries into this market. And as an example, if you are a large manufacturer, are you going to work with a creative industry, somebody who's specialized in consumer technology, where they don't have all of the knowledge, they don't speak the same language, they don't understand the systems integration, SAP and ERP and all of that? Or would you take a partner that's working in Germany, for instance, with large German manufacturers, and take their product that can be as easily exported over here? And I think that is, to me, the biggest call to action, and something I'm really delighted to see the information coming from the report on this, because enterprise is a very important part of where funding will come, where ROI will come from in the next few years, as we then can use all of our talent to also supplement when the consumer projects will be well funded. So I think that's an important part of what keeps me up at night.
I think for me it is, in addition to the investment point, misconceptions about the technology. Right now, I'm fairly certain there is a large group of people out there that think this technology is purely about video games, entertainment, and that's about it. Now, there's nothing wrong with video games. I play video games. The issue is when that is all the technology is believed to be able to achieve. It's an entertainment medium, that's all. That misconception is incredibly dangerous to what we're trying to do in terms of promoting the technology, getting it out there, showing the broad range of use cases through which it can add value to businesses.
All right, I realise you've all been in this room for a while now. I'm going to release everyone and you can attack the panellists individually. Thank you so much, Damien, Layla, Jeremy, Fiona, thank you. All right. And thanks so much, everyone, for coming. We have now just got general networking and there's refreshments outside, so have a look around. And there's demos in the lab. All right, thank you.